Hello and welcome to Pricing College with your hosts Aidan Campbell
and Joanna Wells.
In today's episode we want to look at a news article that appeared today, the 8th of September 2022, and I think it almost suggests that more people should listen to Pricing College because I suppose fundamentally it looks at some of the most very basic pricing thoughts or strategies that I think that anyone in business or even the media should know. So I think I'll just give a brief intro to it. On a radio station today, 2GB in Sydney, the presenter Jim Wilson grilled the pub entrepreneur Justin Hemmes on the new Allianz Stadium's beer prices and said that they're too expensive because they were more expensive than in the largest bargain or discount off-license store or bottle shop, as they call them in Australia. So I think we just want to look at that and discuss what we can draw from it.
Yeah, it was an interesting one because I suppose the radio host, Jim Wilson, was really trying to act as the voice of the customer and in some way was trying to sort of accuse Justin Hemmes of like overpricing the beer at the stadium in a way, overcharging because he knew he had a captive audience that couldn't go anywhere else. And often, in pricing, you hear that sort of, that fear, that sort of allegation being, cast upon, the pricing manager. And also a reason for discounting, we think we're overcharging our customers and therefore, it's price overrides in the system and discounts occur and it, goes down more and more until, one asks, what is the right price as we undersell offers? So interesting in that way, he thought he was representing the voice of the customer, giving examples that the customers thought, the beer and the hot dog was way too expensive and why was it, $9, I think was the base price, $9.50, and he was charging $10.20, and how extortionate that was for a Tooheys beer. Tooheys beer in Australia is supposed to be a everyman type of beer. It's the standard drink, and he was alleging that that's way too much for the average punter to pay, especially I suppose in a way that they're paying for the football prices, that what they're going to see. It's not a cheap night. You can hear the justifications and they're fair. I suppose in response, Justin Hemmes was like saying, the cost of operations for my business, to be able to supply the stadium, the production, the staff involved is not similar to that of, Dan Murphy's. It's a different business model. Dan Murphy's is, like a supermarket for sort of fairly standard drinks, a very different business model. But what I thought was interesting is what they both resorted to justifying the prices by looking at the cost. And really, Justin Hemmes was like applauded for his response there, but really I thought it was quite limited. Who cares what his cost of operations are? Should a customer care? He should have been justifying the higher prices by the value it brings to the customer. And neither of them really went there. I think, though, that Jim Wilson, the radio presenter, was really trying to get at, you shouldn't charge based on willingness to pay. But I don't think he had a thorough understanding of the principles of pricing to be able to say that quite clearly to Justin Hemmes. But I just thought it was really interesting how they just both devolved into the age-old cost, all different business models, a bit limited. So I actually didn't think it was a great response.
Yeah, I suppose it highlights a lot of the very low-grade journalism that I suppose Australia has and other countries. I think if people are... If you're asking dumb questions, you're going to get really, really dumb answers. And I think we've seen that certainly through COVID and over the last number of years. I think society is... Yeah, it's almost like people are just scoring points with ridiculous questions, and you won't get a good answer. There's certainly not going to be any intellectual rigour with these debates. Look, I think clearly anybody in the right mindset will understand that if you go to a fancier restaurant, if you go to the Ritz Hotel or I'm trying to think of fancy hotels, the Carlton, or fancy hotel names, clearly you're going to pay more for, a drink, a gin and tonic, etc., than you would in a dive bar. Clearly, places cater to different establishments. Clearly, there's a different value being provided. This new football stadium that's being built, I think it's the one in Moore Park that replaced the old City Football Stadium. And I think, clearly like $1 billion or more has been spent on this facility. It's to be the best and the brightest. It's to attract international acts, international sporting events. It's to create an atmosphere of real, upmarket, a real great night out, international standards. I don't know if I agree with them bulldozing a perfectly fine stadium and rebuilding another one on the same site, but I think they're competing. They're not just competing now with sites in Sydney or in Australia. They're competing with facilities in America. They talk about some of these big American football stadiums or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, where they're trying to attract international events, international concerts. Justin Hemmes he doesn't run dive bars. He runs the Maryvale chain. They own some of the most upmarket and fancy establishments in Sydney. They're not. They're selling fancy drinks. They're selling. Is it drinks they're selling, or is it an experience? Is it an exclusivity? Is it what is the value they're selling? And those are the questions that really, I suppose, you want to look at. The question I suppose you could ask is that the right person to be? Is that the right style and value to be selling drinks in what is a football stadium in theory, whereby, traditionally at least football, the different versions of football were the everyman sport. Everyone could go, bring their kids, have a beer, have a whatever it was, a sausage sizzle, and it's cheap and accessible. So is there incongruence there that, could be a valid point? But at the end of the day, once you bring in a fancy upmarket business such as that, don't expect to get, Hungry Jacks, or it's not just selling a hot dog out of the back of a truck. So it is, what is the value we're selling? What is the value people are buying? And, there's a whole number of questions that aren't even being, acknowledged that they exist, let alone discussed.
Yeah, so the stadium itself could have more of a premium pricing strategy. And life in Sydney is good. It's sort of they're trying to increase. It's in a nice area of town. It's all very exclusive, and they're just trying to align with the city and where it's going in the future. And then you've got the customer, the fans, who maybe travel quite a few miles out from suburbs into the city, may have a completely different lifestyle, don't have that type of spend, but are frequent goers to football, and they're surprised. So there's a dissonance there between the business strategy and what the market and their market, the customer, have they looked into that segmentation? Or are they just trying to hope and migrate people into that sort of more premium pricing strategy by just, dazzling them with a great, shiny new stadium, a large array of drinks and food that potentially they don't want. They just want the standard TUIs. They don't really care as much maybe for the more, premium lagers and ales. So you're right, it could be, the choice of vendors, the business strategy potentially is misaligned to the market. The people that are really going are, average, family. They're thinking, God, it's hard enough to pay for the tickets, because those, ticket prices are going up, as we've discussed before as well, up and down using dynamic pricing. And now on top of this, we're being given this premium pricing strategy for an offer that we don't really want. Now, this could be all signs that trying to educate their customer into this new business strategy, or it could be dragging them into it. It's kind of a difficult one to discuss now, because families are under huge amounts of pressure with interest rates increasing, inflation, food prices increasing, and now even leisure prices, just doing something, with your family, everything's just going up. So it might be wrong timing. But in terms of this particular article, I really would have liked to have heard the justifications of a higher price point being about the value it delivers to customers. So, you know, the convenience of having a nice beer at the stadium, having the option to have a, you know, beer and a lovely burger as you sit to see your favourite team play. I mean, it's for some people, they're willing to pay for it. For others, they're not. They'll just bring their flask, bottle of water and their sandwiches, I suppose. I mean, that's a segmentation of sorts. But a total disregard for, if let's say Jim Wilson was speaking on behalf of the customer, whether it aligns with your business strategy or not, or whether you personally agree with it as, you know, business leader, it doesn't really matter. You should, there's an element of truth and untruth in everything that we hear, and it should be recognised that, you know, potentially willingness to pay isn't as high as they thought. So what are they going to do to change that? And that would be the interesting transition plan. You know, maybe change their assortment, change their range, maybe change the menu. Who knows? But I hopefully, you know, better radio presenter will ask better questions and maybe speak on behalf of the customer in a more educated fashion.
You know, I'm actually going to disagree on this. I think he answered it in the best way for him. Clearly, like 2GB it's not a shock jock station, but it's a talkback. Tends to be a little bit right wing, tends to be populist, tends to be, know-it-all journalists who have a certain core audience who likes to complain about the world. You know, again, that's just my personal views. There's some good stuff on it too, from time to time. But realistically, if you're trying to hold yourself up, Jim Wilson is the populist, the everyman, the champion of the people. Like I don't know if Hemme is coming on and talking about value. Clearly, the listeners on that show probably aren't really his audience. They're probably not really the people who will be buying drinks on a Saturday night and in the Ivy nightclub or one of these other bars. And so I suppose it's a political protect yourself. And maybe he's right just to defend himself. He's not there to educate because, clearly that's not something he can do. He's not there to he clearly understands value. He clearly is, doing very well, understands the value of hospitality. But is that the argument or the discussion that this show wants to have? I think you're probably better off arguing along the lines. You're not going to sell any more products, clearly, so I think it's better off getting out of it an ambush by playing the game that they want you to play. And fair enough, he is completely legitimate. The costs will be infinitely different. They're not even chalk and cheese. It's just completely different life forms from running what is basically a supermarket for alcohol versus a fancy place that sells drinks at football games and concerts. So his points are completely valid. I think he clearly understands the value of stuff. I think he clearly understands segmenting his market. And, I think those are sort of my views on it. I don't think it sort of highlights a little bit of like some of the common, in some, certainly in businesses, people think, everyone thinks they have a view on pricing. And this is what happens. People think they know everything about pricing when in some ways they don't even know the first thing. And, you really have to get that light bulb moment where you can move this person from like really what is very uneducated communication to something that's starting to move them along the line to being educated on the topic that is an expert environment. But again, I'd say who's running the multi-million-dollar business? Is it Jim Wilson or is it Justin Hemme?
Yeah, I suppose it's just it can be a bit, a typical sort of response. So we hear it in like boardrooms all the time, And like if you're going to talk to customers and you're going to appeal to them and actually make them think differently, especially if you've got a different business strategy, then using the old my cost structure versus your cost structure leads to that. I'm just thinking about procurement here. It's like, we think your prices are too high. Show me your costs. Okay, my business model is completely different, so I've got a different cost structure. Sure, I will show you. And actually, even that was the devolution of the conversation. He was actually going to, show the radio presenter what it really was like to run a business in a stadium. I mean, it's like open book costings again. It's a bit tedious. I mean, I actually would like, change the conversation, break it up a bit. Tell us what is the value here? What are the benefits we're going to get? Why? Re-educate me on something positive. Like, I want to know why. It's great to go out and have that extra good experience. You telling me you're going to give me an even better experience? Well, great. justify that. That's not only justification; it's a good marketing opportunity. It just removes the stale sort of conversation around costs, and going back to that, it just makes the experience the same old. So we're talking about experience in the stadium. It's also the price is based on your experience as a business owner implementing and delivering this service to me. I don't really care. I want this to be about me. I'm willing to pay a higher price if you're telling me that it's going to be exceptional. Is it exceptional? So I think I disagree with you on this one. I think any opportunity is a great opportunity to market, and especially based on value, because it's always positive. If it's not positive, then you've got something to worry about. And if you're not going to talk about it, the fans will find out and the customers will find out soon enough.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. See ya. Have a good week. Bye.